Joe Manchin wrote an article over the weekend, and he basically said, listen, I'm not going to do anything with the filibuster. We're not going to abolish the filibuster, and we're not going to reform the filibuster back to the talking filibuster, which was something that he previously hinted like, I might be in favor of that. Now, apparently, he's abandoning that as well. And then the other thing is, he's abandoning the For the People Act, the bill S1, which we'll get to a little bit later. I'll give you some specifics on that bill. But he's saying, I'm also not for that. So, effectively, with this article, Joe Manchin is saying, Joe Biden's first term is over. Nothing else is going to get done, period. The idea you get anything through regular order is comical. What do you need, 8 or 9 Republican votes? You're not even going to get 1 or 2, never mind 8 or 9. And with Manchin saying, he needs my vote to get anything passed, and I'm not for even these very basic things, that's it. It's done. And anything that does get through would be basically Republican legislation. It would be Democratic legislation that has been watered down so much. It would be a compromise on the compromise of the compromise of the compromise, and it would just be right-wing legislation. And if they pass that, then Joe Biden and all of his gaggle of idiots would go around saying, look at me doing bipartisan reform. Sure, the legislation is terrible, but at least it's bipartisan. So Manchin wrote that article. Then he went on Fox News to talk about it. Let me show you some of what Chris Wallace asked him.
I want to ask you 2 questions quickly, if I can, Senator Manchin, about that. First of all, you have made it clear, and I'm not going to ask you again, you said that you oppose scrapping the filibuster. The question I have is whether or not, and you say you hope that that'll bring the parties together. The question I have is whether or not you're doing it exactly the wrong way. And hear me out on this. If you were to keep the idea that maybe you would vote to kill the filibuster, wouldn't that give Republicans an incentive to actually negotiate? Because old Joe Manchin's out there, and who knows what he's going to do. By taking it off the table, haven't you empowered Republicans to be obstructionists?
I don't think so, because we have 7 brave Republicans that continue to vote for what they know is right and the facts as they see them, not worrying about the political consequences. I believe there's a lot more of my Republican colleagues and friends that feel the same way. I'm just hoping they are able to rise to the occasion to defend our country and support our country and make sure that we have a democracy for this republic of all the people. I'm just very hopeful that I see good signs. We're doing, Chris, more things than ever before. Give us some time. I know everyone's putting deadlines. Well, got to be done by this, and this.
But let me ask you the final question, sir. I mean, let's just take the idea of creating a 9/11 commission to investigate the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. Republicans blocked that. Senator McConnell, the head of the Republicans in the Senate, says that he's 100% focused on blocking the Biden agenda. Question, aren't you being naive about this continuing talk about bipartisan cooperation?
I'm not being naive. I think he's 100% wrong in trying to block all the good things that we're trying to do for America. We'd a lot better if we had participation, and we're getting participation, but when it comes time to final vote, I disagree with Leader McConnell on this, the minority leader on this issue, that he puts politics before the policies that I think we need for our country. I'm going to continue to keep working with my bipartisan friends, and hopefully we can get more of them. I can tell you this, in 2013, at that time, Harry Reid, the leader of the majority party, the Democrats, basically the nuclear option, which did away the filibuster on appointments and district and circuit judges. Come back to 2017, then we had Leader McConnell at that time in the majority, and he did away with it for the Supreme Court. So what goes around comes around here. They all understand that, and there were 33 Democrats in 2017 that signed a letter to please save the filibuster and save our democracy. That's what I'm trying to do.
So when he makes that point about, I need to save the filibuster to save our democracy, that is so dense. He's either completely stupid or he's a liar. Because the whole point of the filibuster is to be anti-democratic. That's the whole point. It is by definition undemocratic. It is used to block small d democratic bills. That's the whole point. So the filibuster makes it so that you need 60 votes in the Senate to get something through regular order. There's 100 senators there. So a majority would be 51. but they make it so you need 60. So, but 51 would be small d Democratic. So you're not saving our democracy by supporting an anti-democratic, procedural maneuver. Now, listen, I'm not even commenting right now on my position in regards to the filibuster. I'm just objectively describing what the filibuster is. Nobody can argue it is democratic. You can't make that argument. It is the exact opposite of democratic. That's the point of it. And then the other point is, again, he has the nerve to say he's basically like, I'm trying to save our democracy. He opposes the For the People Act. The For the People Act is to try to bring back some semblance of democracy. So what's in that bill? You have same-day voter registration, early voting, automatic voter registration, vote by mail, make Election Day a federal holiday, ban voter roll purges, paper ballots, crackdowns on foreign lobbying and super PACs and dark money. It's a bill that makes the president and the vice president release their tax returns. It's a bill that effectively bans gerrymandering. I'm only giving you some of the provisions of this bill that he just came out against. But the whole point of that bill was like, let's try to have some semblance of a democracy in what's supposed to be a constitutional republic and a representative democracy. That was the whole point of that bill. And Joe Manchin comes out against it and then has the nerve to say, I'm trying to save our democracy. You're trying to save our democracy by opposing a pro-democracy bill and by supporting an anti-democracy political maneuver, the filibuster. Again, he's either the dumbest person ever, he's either stupid, or he's just lying to you. Those are the only options. So he also says, or he's asked by Chris Wallace, isn't it naive to talk about bipartisan cooperation? And his response is basically, no, it's not naive. I think we could get this done. You can get what done? What can you get done? You could take some nominal Democratic piece of legislation that's already watered down and water it down 4 or 5 more times until it's just Republican legislation, and then you can pass the Republican legislation. Let me ask you a question. What's the point of voting for Democrats in that scenario? I mean that seriously. What's the point? If when you get Obama, for example, what healthcare legislation did he pass? They called it Obamacare. The real name of it is the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is based off of Mitt Romney's healthcare reform in Massachusetts that keeps the for-profit health insurance companies intact. It also was originally from the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing think tank. So you vote for a Democrat and you got a Republican reform. What was the point of voting for a Democrat? What was the point? What's the point of voting for Biden if at the end of the day he does an infrastructure bill that is just a Republican infrastructure bill? And by the way, if they get anything through on the issue of infrastructure, and that's a big if, they probably won't get anything through, but if they do, it'll just be a Republican piece of legislation. It'll be stripped of all of the good things. So what's the fucking point? But that gets to the main point when it comes to Joe Manchin. Everybody talks about him as if he's got, he's just a moderate Democrat and he's got these moderate beliefs and all he's doing is standing by his moderate beliefs. No, the reality is he's corrupt. He's bought by the same donors as the Republican Party and much of the Democratic Party. And the fact of the matter is he half agrees or a little more than half agrees with the Republicans. And so he wants diet Republican legislation. That's what he wants. That's what he wants. Now, I remember, because we covered this back during the Trump era, they track, 538 tracks how often everybody votes with Trump. And with Manchin, I believe it was between 50% and 60% of the time he voted with Donald Trump. So he half, or a little more than half, agrees with Donald Trump and agrees with Republicans. So that's what's going on here, is he's corrupt, he's representing the same donors, and he also is just a diet Republican, and so he's pushing for diet Republican stuff. But the thing that's driving me crazy is this notion that he's not corrupt, and also that he's like abandoning what he's supposed to do. He never wanted to do any of those things. And so that's why the job of Joe Biden and Democratic leadership is to sit this fucker down and say, listen, son, we can be your best friend or your worst enemy. You're going to decide. You're going to decide. If you vote for our agenda, if you vote for $15 minimum wage, if you vote for increasing taxes on the rich, if you vote for our infrastructure bill, you know what? What do you want? There's 2 military bases in West Virginia. Do you want 3? Do you want 4? Or would you like it if we shut down those military bases, the 2 that are already there, and sent them elsewhere? If you don't vote for our agenda, maybe that happens. What do you want? You want an infrastructure project specific to West Virginia? You want a jobs creation program that employs 40% of the state? What do you want? We'll give you whatever you want to vote for our legislation. Do you want a spot in the administration? We'll give you whatever you want to vote for it. But if you vote against it, you are done with politics. You're done. We're going to run somebody against you. We're going to fund the person who's running against you in a primary. We're going to make it our #1 goal to kick you out of Washington, D.C. and make sure you don't get a fucking job here afterwards. How you like them apples? This is what you would do if you actually knew how to play politics and you believed in something if you were Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't really believe in anything. That's the problem. You want to know why he's not holding Joe Manchin accountable? He kind of agrees with Joe Manchin. Now, to be fair, he's not as far right as Joe Manchin is. You know, in some ways, he's to Joe Manchin's left. But, you know, if you have Joe Manchin who 50 to 60% agrees with the Republicans, Joe Biden, like, what, 30%, 40% agrees with the Republicans? So he's not all that offended by what Joe Manchin is doing here. If anything, Joe Manchin is giving Joe Biden the excuse to say, oh, I wanted to do all these good things, and I told you guys I was going to do all these things like $15 minimum wage and public option and raising taxes on the rich, but what can I do? I can't do it. I got Joe Manchin. He twisted my arm. He twisted my arm. It's not like I'm the president of the United States and I have a million maneuvers I can use, but I'm choosing not to use. So this is where we are, guys. This is where we are. Joe Manchin had the nerve to say scrapping the filibuster will bring the parties together. On what planet? We could come up with the cure for cancer and you wouldn't get 60 votes through regular order. You wouldn't. You wouldn't get it. And I love the question from Chris Wallace, where he was like, if you threaten eliminating the filibuster, then the GOP will maybe be scared and they'll say, okay, we'll come to the table and we'll get something done on infrastructure, but you have to keep the filibuster intact. That's a great point, and it's honestly a strategy that I didn't think of. But again, I'm not even sure I would use that strategy because the fact of the matter is it would still be a shitty bill. So everything would go through reconciliation. I would increase the number of reconciliation options that we get. I would reform the filibuster to either eliminate it or go back to the talking filibuster, which would strictly eliminate the number of filibusters that can be done. And by the way, Manchin says there are 7 brave Republicans who do the right thing. And so that's why he thinks they can get something done. Okay, but you know you need more than 7. So to say 7, that still leaves you short of passing anything through regular order, doesn't it? But I got to go further than that. The idea that 7 brave Republicans do the right thing, where did that come from? I'll tell you where it came from. The attempted insurrection. There were 7 Republicans who were like, I'm against this. But guess what? On actual policy, all of them agree completely with Republicans. They agree completely with Donald Trump. So there is no, oh, we're going to find some middle ground or common ground, or they're different from the other Republicans. They're exactly like the other Republicans. They just don't like Trump. But they're exactly the same on policy, which is all that matters. So there are no 7 brave Republicans who do the right thing. Oh my God, man. So listen, now it's on Joe Biden, and my guess is he's going to lay in a chalk outline of himself on the ground. Say, oh, you got me. If he really wanted to get his agenda passed, if he really believed in these things, he has moves. He definitely has moves. But he's not going to do them. And he's not going to do them, I think, because he doesn't really believe in them. And so Manchin and Sinema are a convenient excuse for him to be like, I tried. And then the argument will come up again. Vote for Democrats, and then we'll do the agenda. And then people will vote for Democrats, and then they don't do the agenda, and the Democrats will say, but you got to vote for Democrats to do the agenda. And Glenn Greenwald came up with a good description of this. I think I'm going to butcher the term he used, but it's like the rotating villain theory or something like that, where you could blame Manchin and Sinema right now, but the fact of the matter is, even if Manchin and Sinema said, you know what, I'll vote for the agenda, then 2 others would pop up, Warner and somebody else, and then they would be the villains. And no matter what, you always have somebody who doesn't do what the Democratic agenda was, what the populist stuff is, and they get away with not doing it because you could just put all the blame on Manchin and Sinema or Warner and whoever if they take their place. So the argument is all of the rest of us are good, but those 2 are the bad ones. Really, in reality, there's about 8 Democratic senators who are a problem. And we saw that with the $15 minimum wage thing. I think it was about 8 who were against it. So again, you'd have to play the hardball with those 8 and twist their arm and get them to do the right thing. But he's not going to play hardball with them because, again, I don't think Biden really believes in his heart of hearts in a lot of the things that are on the so-called Biden agenda. So here we are. So nothing else is going to get done. It's beyond pathetic. It's beyond pathetic. And it shows you, it gives the corporate Democrats cover to not do things that they really don't want to do because they all want to represent the donors to one extent or another. And Manchin is just like the face of that now. But nobody should be okay with this. Nobody should be okay with this. You should want to tear down this system and absolutely restructure it because we can't continue like this. We're in like an era of permanent corruption and neoliberal corporatism. And this shows you the mechanics of how the status quo always wins.